In the village of Nemea, where the roofs were thatched with reeds the color of straw and the wells sang with limestone voices, insomnia was considered a public shame. Doors were painted slate if their owners were caught wandering after midnight, and the baker would not sell bread to a sleepless customer until 3 days of rest had been proven by the mayor's stamped certificate. It was a peculiar cruelty, because the valley's nights were mercilessly beautiful. So beautiful that the full moon seemed to ring like a silver bell over the river, and beauty begged to be witnessed. Yet the rule had endured for generations, ever since the village elders recorded that nightmares bred in waking midnight eyes like mold in damp grain. Nobody questioned the law, until Lorien Price, bookbinder by trade, fell victim to a sleeplessness thick as syrup, and by defying the curfew discovered why the moonlight tasted sweet. Lorien was 29, short of stature, dark of hair, and possessed of fingers so deft that no one could outstitch his leather spines. He was an artisan of quiet habits, the sort who would keep a receipt for twine from 7 years past just because it seemed rude to discard something that had served its purpose faithfully. His only indulgence was a habit of staying at the workshop after sunset, reading poetry aloud to the books he repaired. He believed a volume sewn together with patience deserved a benediction of sound. On spring evening, he noticed the words blurring on the page, and a migraine rose like a glacier behind his brow, then never entirely left. Nights became stretches of starry sand, impossible to cross. When dawn came, he wore a smile stitched in the wrong place on his face, and the villagers began whispering about slate paint and the shame of restless men. He tried every remedy offered: a poppy, seed milk from the midwife, dull sermons from the alderman's son, even a visit to the apothecary who sealed him in a cedar closet with lavender smoke until he gagged. Nothing subdued the drum of wakefulness. On the 3rd week of his vigil, the mayor arrived with a pail of grey paint. Lorien bowed, lips cracked. "Let me try one more night," he pleaded. The mayor agreed, less out of mercy than curiosity. Nobody had asked for a final chance before. Though the bookbinder, exhausted yet flaring with something like wonder, promised to return with evidence of rest, and closed his shop door behind him as the sun slipped away. He did not drink the draught of chamomile waiting on his bedstand. Something tugged at him at the corner of his eye, or the hem of his soul, and told him to step outside. He obeyed. The moon had risen over the river, full enough to make the water appear glass. In that mirror, Lorien saw flitting shapes, pale as candle wax, butterflies, but larger than any moth, with wings like thin slivers of sculpted stone. They hovered over the surface, dipping their curled tongues into the lambent reflection. Whenever a wing brushed the water, ripples scattered, and each ripple birthed a spark of light that drifted upward, weaving through the village roofs. He leaned over the rail of the footbridge, entranced. One of the creatures broke formation and fluttered toward him, its wings etched with faint veins of silver. A marble statue come alive. It alighted upon his wrist, cold at first, then pleasantly cool, as if carved from night's own breeze. Lorien saw his own stunned eyes mirrored in its faceted gaze. The thing unfurled its tongue, dabbed at his skin, and withdrew. In its wake, a mote of light remained, sinking through his pores like a snowflake falling into warm water. A hush filled his bones. He could not keep standing. He lay down on the bridge planks, head cradled by folded arms, and for the first time in weeks, slept. Dream poured over him. He walked a corridor lined with leather-bound books that hummed like bees in covert communion. On the ceiling, constellations rearranged themselves into words of handwritten script. Bind the tear, mend the soul. A breeze smelled of starch and sunlit parchment. Before him floated alabaster butterflies. They brushed their wings against glowing doorways set in the corridor's walls, and each door opened onto the face of someone he loved. His mother tasting soup, his apprentice giggling at a dog's antics, the baker dusting loaves. Their eyes were closed in their own beds. The butterflies drifted through their images, scattering grains of moonlight, each sleeper's brow smoothed, their lips curved, as if a nightmare's grip had been softened by unseen fingertips. He awoke at sunrise, still on the bridge. He felt astonishingly whole. He also knew, without understanding how, that he had been shown a secret nobody in Nemea would believe, least of all those who wielded shame like a shepherd's stick. Nonetheless, he reported to the mayor, recounting every detail: moon-drinking butterflies, the corridor, the doors, the pollination of dreams. The mayor's bushy eyebrows rose precariously high. When Lorien concluded, the older man set down his quill. "I will not paint your threshold slate," he conceded. "But keep your fancies to yourself. We cherish tranquility more than spectacle." Lorien tried. He went back to stitching covers and minding the till, yet each night the pool returned. He began meeting the butterflies intentionally, bringing a notebook to sketch their flight. He learned they drank only from the moon's reflection, not directly from the orb, as though the water filtered brightness into nourishment. After drinking, they would drift over the rooftops, slipping through cracked shutters or knotholes in beams, dissolving into beds like fog. When dawn threatened, they returned to the river, folded their wings, and sank beneath the surface, as though stone again. One night, he followed them into the dwelling of old Sina, a widow famous for muttering in her sleep. Lorien stood in the doorway, heart hammering, and watched a single alabaster butterfly perch on her forehead. The old woman's twisting mouth relaxed. She whispered her late husband's name with such tenderness, Lorien felt like an intruder. Moon dust glimmered at her temples. It occurred to him that the village's obsession with stamping out insomnia had deprived its citizens of witnessing the nightly miracle safeguarding their very peace. He closed the door and left before the candle stub he carried guttered. Word spread nevertheless. A child glimpsed him beneath a lamppost writing by starlight and told her mother, who told the brewer, who told the council. Soon Lorien was summoned again. This time, the mayor looked not merely interested, but alarmed. "Superstitions are tender," he warned. "Your tales risk igniting panic." Lorien countered that people deserved knowledge of what protected them. A heated debate ensued, ending with compromise. Lorien would collect definitive proof within 1 fortnight or cease his midnights forever. How does one capture moonlight on butterfly wings? His apprentice, Mina, clever and stubborn, proposed a solution: silver emulsion plates, the type traders use to copy maps. Coat a thin glass circle in alchemical salts, hold it to the butterfly's wing, and the creature's imprint might seize onto the plate. Lorien worried about harming them, but recognized the necessity. They spent 3 days grinding salts and whispering over a fire that had to remain hot, yet unseen. On the 13th night of the fortnight, they crept to the footbridge, equipment packed within velvet to deaden clinks. The butterflies had already started their nightly ascent. Lorien extended a palm. One perched readily, almost expectant. Mina's hands shook as she pressed the plate against its wing. A soft hiss like sand poured over a candle chimed. The butterfly trembled, then darted away. On the plate glowed a perfect silhouette, veins shimmering silver, edges soft as sighs, proof. They exhaled in tandem, and then the river convulsed. A tremor slithered along the bank. The other butterflies swooped into chaotic spirals. Some collided mid-air and fell like petals. An oily bulge surfaced where the moon's reflection broke. What emerged resembled a dragonfly, yet grotesquely magnified and made of black crystal. Thorax segmented into shards that scraped together, emitting a sound of grinding teeth. Its wings cut through cloud and star alike, leaving gashes of darkness that did not heal. Where the alabaster butterfly's flight was silent hymn, this thing screamed ruin. Mina stumbled backward. "What is it?" Lorien's mouth tasted of iron. He remembered, in his dream corridor, a single phrase carved into a lintel half forgotten, where light drinks, dark hungers. The crystal insect lunged not at them, but at the moon's reflection, plunging its stinger into the water and sucking. The reflection shattered, moon broken into a million tremulous shards, and as the creature drank, its husk blazed with stolen radiance. Deprived of nourishment, the alabaster butterflies began to wilt mid-flight, wings curving inward. They dropped like ivory leaves, striking rooftops with brittle cracks. Lorien realized that if the Moonlight's avatar devoured the entire reflection, not only would the butterflies perish, but the dreams they pollinated would rot into nightmares. And perhaps that had been the origin of the village's ancient fear. Echoes of an old assault, half remembered as a law against sleeplessness. He and Mina ran. The crystal horror was huge but sluggish between gulps. They needed to restore the reflection, or at least protect a portion long enough for the butterflies to feed. Mina yelled, "Mirrors!" They burst into the workshop, smashing display glass from framed illustrations, grabbing polished steel trays, even the brass knob from the storeroom door. They raced back and arranged a makeshift mosaic along the riverbank, angling surfaces to catch the real moon high above, slivers of reflection scattered over the water like coins. Alabaster butterflies, sensing sustenance, fought gravity to hover over these patches, tongues darting greedily. The black insect raised its head, eyes flaming with stolen luminescence, and screeched. It charged toward the largest mirror tray. Lorien braced his body before it, shield upraised, expecting death. But the monster hesitated, confused by its own reflection glaring back. A visage of cracked night, swallowing white fire. Enraged, it struck. The tray snapped from Lorien's grip, yet, as it shattered, shards flew, each a new mirror catching moonlight. Reflections multiplied. Impossible to drink all at once. The creature thrashed, lashing with its stinger, but for every spot it darkened, two more glowed. Meanwhile, Mina darted among fallen butterflies, coaxing survivors onto her sleeves. She carried them to the fresh reflections, pleading, "Drink, little ones, please." They obeyed, weakly at first, then with mounting vigor, their wings regained luster and began to beat in unison, a gathering choir of pale thunder. The monster pivoted, locking on Mina. Lorien hurled himself into its path. The stinger grazed his shoulder, searing cloth and skin alike, and pinned him to a tree. Pain flared molten, yet he clutched a shard of mirror in bleeding hands and thrust it against the creature's faceted eye. A beam of undiluted moonlight rebounded into the crystal skull. The insect convulsed, howling with static. And from every rooftop butterflies rose, hundreds now, galvanized by replenished light. They dived upon the monster, covering it in a rushing, blonk noise. Their wings pummeled, their tongues pierced. For each droplet of light stolen, they reclaimed tenfold. The black crystal dulled to smoky quartz, then to coal. With a crack like ice under thaw, the creature collapsed into the river, dissolving into harmless shadow that drifted downstream and beneath the bridge until dawn devoured it. Silence. Lorien hung limp, but Mina rushed and broke the stinger, freeing him. They laughed and sobbed at once. Dozens of butterflies circled them, then landed on their wounds, seeping cool light that numbed pain and stitched tissue faster than any needle. When morning glazed the horizon, the butterflies retreated beneath the river, safe for another day. The fortnight's deadline expired, with more witnesses than a mayor could smother. The clash by the river had woken half the town. People gathered at sunrise, gasping at shattered glass, at the scorched tree, at Lorien's bloodied shirt strangely absent of wounds. The mayor arrived last, robe hastily donned. Lorien, voice hoarse, recounted the night. Mina held up the original silver emulsion plate. The perfect wing print remained, and added fragments of mirror flecked with captured glow. Skepticism would have survived had not a single alabaster butterfly, tardy to its burrow, chosen that moment to soar over the crowd, haloed in dawn. Gasps melted into awe. The council convened. Laws crumble faster than stone when truth stands on them like spring water on sugar. It was decreed that midnight wandering was no longer shameful but a civic duty, provided wanderers carried lanterns hooded with blue glass so as not to compete with the moon. Lorien was named custodian of reflections. Mina became keeper of salts and taught children to craft mirror shards, not for vanity but vigilance. Roofs remained reed-thatched, yet now hosted bowls of water so butterflies never lacked a surrogate pool when clouds veiled the river. But peace did not end the story, only turned its page. Lorien's migraines returned whenever a new moon rendered the sky absent of silver. On those nights he sensed shapes beneath the river itching to rise. He consulted dreams, conversed with butterflies. They could not speak in words, yet images poured. A map of silver trails leading upstream to mountain caves where reflections formed even without water veins of lunar crystal. If those caverns fractured, dark insects could swarm not just one, but every village, sleeping unguarded. So Lorien organized expeditions under the guise of trade, venturing into valleys at moonrise to teach border settlements the art of mirrored vigilance. Slowly a network of watchers grew. Sometimes letters came from distant hamlets, thanking him for saving a child from night terrors. Within my daughter's dream, she saw pale butterflies weaving a net of light and woke laughing. These letters he bound into a volume titled Ledger of Restful People, his proudest creation, though its pages smelled of teardrops. Years later, when Lorien's hair silvered like moonwash, a young scholar named Osric asked him whether he regretted the wound that scarred his shoulder or the sleepless weeks that had preceded revelation. Lorien smiled, recalling how the stinger had pinned him like paper to cork. He answered, "If I had slept easily, I would have never met wakefulness's true purpose. Some nights are cruel only to open the door to wonder." On the eve he died, a gentle passing, mid-sentence while teaching Mina's granddaughter how to reseat a spine. The skies were overcast, yet the river glowed faintly, for thousands of rooftops mirrored bowls of water, and on each glimmer floated alabaster butterflies drinking proxy moons. In dreams across the valley, children wandered corridors of books and opened doors onto fields where fears lay down like tired dogs beneath the cool breeze of pale wings. They would never know the name of the dark insect, nor remember the era of painted slate. They would inherit instead the hush that follows a hush, the assurance that when the world sleeps, something tender keeps watch. Above the village, clouds parted for an instant, letting true moonlight spear through. The butterflies rose in a single column, casting pinprick shadows over chimneys and gardens until they looked like snow ascending rather than falling. They traced the path Lorien had once walked alone on the footbridge, circled twice, and vanished into the brilliance. Some said they dissolved back into uncarved stone, awaiting the next mouth of night. Others believed they followed the spirit of a bookbinder into whatever library houses the stars. Both accounts feel true. When the river is still, the moon is full, and the air thrums with the near silent applause of alabaster wings folding around your dreams.